Hello, Dr. Laitman. Hello to our friends, all of our writers, viewers. We are on our writers' meeting, and we'd like to ask Rav Laitman about going back to routine. Israel is really starting to feel that it is approaching its Day of Independence and freedom. We see that today Israel is receiving many reliefs, businesses are going back to work, people are content, and gradually we'll also see from day to day, from week to week, how we're going more and more back to work, to our day-to-day life. And I like to ask, are you happy that finally we are going back to business?
I'm
not so happy about the way that we are going back, because I don't see that we're returning in a good and correct way. We have to understand, we are in an integral environment. Nature is a closed system, and this closed system, when it falls out of balance, then the system itself needs to return to balance by some kind of opposite force. The disbalance that we're creating in the system of nature is caused by our ego. This is the only thing that's standing in our way, that's harming the entire integral general system. That we're not taking anything into consideration. We see it with how we treat ecology, nature, our attitude towards this. It's like allowing a child to go into some toy store and there he starts going wild. And therefore, what we see from nature all the time is a response that we are inviting by our egoistic force in the integral system, including this coronavirus, and ahead, if so, we have still many more viruses and so on. And I don't know what else is going to happen. However, it seems to me that ahead there's many such phenomenon, because we didn't bring anything back into balance. We got a response from nature, and what do? We sat at home a bit, and we're going out again. So we have to think how going out now will harm less the integral system of nature. What did we harm? What can we correct now and harm less? And this is something that we're not doing. We're not sensitive toward this, we're not thinking about this, we're not committed to it, and we have no desire for it. Therefore, I don't think that this returnal will be a happy one at all. First of all, we want to go back to the same life that we had. It was a life where we all cursed. We all cursed everything. We destroyed nature. We destroyed our families. We destroyed our children. We knew that all around the planet that we're doing something that doesn't fit, doesn't suit smart, created beings, that we're simply not in control of our desires, our urges, and therefore I'm completely not happy, not content with this return. I think that we will get many more blows, and maybe we'll learn from that. We'll learn for sure, but it depends in what way. There is a short way to make a correct calculation. So, okay, I surrender, I understand what I have to do. I have to cause less harm. Let's try and do it this way. Let's try and do it that way. But in the meantime, I continue. In the meantime, all the governments are giving their okay to go wild however way you see fit, and please. And therefore, I am sure that up ahead there are much worse viruses than the one we have experienced. This is all I have to say. Therefore, if you're asking, am I happy about going back to our day-to-day life? I'm happy that we're going back, but I'm not completely happy about the way in which we're going back. We did not perform any self-scrutiny, draw any conclusion, and therefore we're advancing toward the next blows that will be much worse than this one. Okay, what exactly were you expecting? What does it mean to ideally go back to our day-to-day life? I expected that among mankind, besides our organization, there are many other organizations, scientific organizations, thinking people that understand, that feel, and in general, wise people that understand that we can't go back to the same life that we had, because our life was ill. And we have to perform self-scrutiny. We have to give account as to what's going on, and that all governments are pressuring us, go back to your business. It's not wise. It only shows how much these governments themselves, they are the proprietors of those viruses. And all of humanity is that way, I'm sorry to say. On the other hand, people can no longer stay at home. I'm not saying that you have to stay at home. I'm only saying that we were at home for, suppose we're confined to our homes for 2 months more or less. Why throughout these 2 months did we not calculate, take into account what should we and what shouldn't we go back to? That part of what we're doing, there are things that we can't reopen. We can't, because these are things that give us nothing. How can we take these businesses? How can we give people that their businesses are no longer relevant? How can we give them some kind of compensation, all of us together, by coming a bit closer? The coronavirus didn't come just because we're destroying nature, but because we're acting in a way in which we're destroying each other. By competition, by other things, we have to both build a bit of a more friendly new society. Also, our attitude toward nature should be more friendly. We have to think about the still, the vegetative, the animate, about people. And this could be through very serious taxes that we have to put upon those billionaires that no longer know what to do with the billions that they have collected. We have to really start working in a more serious fashion. That wise is he who sees the future. We that have developed before the coronavirus, we understood that we're developing incorrectly, and only due to the inertia, we couldn't stop. So the coronavirus stopped us. Let's use it. We can use it, that it stopped us, and change a bit the direction in which we're developing, for it to be a bit more social, friendly, less harmful, not to open businesses that are really useless, by which we only destroy, kill. Let's decide now something about the more balanced world, but we're not doing it. The government is giving an okay for here in the world, and everyone's running like on Black Friday or something.
And Black Friday.
So what did we do here? We didn't learn anything. This is my opinion. And I can only add one thing to this. The next virus or the next blow, I think that they will be more biological. But you can't tell nature what to do, because that we are breaching the integral balance of nature, like we're doing now. We can get such blows, complex blows, that I personally am afraid. I feel sorry for humanity, for people, that due to their foolishness, they're causing themselves such harm. We're inside a system, inside some kind of sphere, and we can't do what we feel like. We can't have a wife, children, grandchildren, relatives, friends, everyone does too. And we're also living on this planet. We have nothing besides it. We have no place to run to. And we're practically completing its destruction. I'm finished.
Rav, shalom.
Rav, hello. Seems that you were expecting for the inner change to come to the decision makers? No. I know that for the decision makers, the only thing that's important to them is power and money. There's nothing else behind their decisions. But still, in society, there are many people that are thinking in the integral direction and how to preserve nature and how to change the system of humanity, that understand that this direction is wrong, that it'll end poorly. What do we need all of these weapons for? How much we have to invest money in all of these things? There are people that understand all of these things, only they don't have the power to influence. And Kabbalists have even less, obviously. And therefore, what would I expect? I would expect that nonetheless, the decision makers that are sitting in government, they are not foolish, but at least that they would not be so foolish that money and power, their position, would blind their eyes so much that they don't understand that going back to how things were is a very severe act that leads us to general annihilation. So if I understand, there are three levels. There's the simple person, there are the decision makers, the big decision makers, and in between there are the people that you just mentioned that understand what goes on in nature, but they have less power than decision makers. Right, who's going to listen to them? So who is the key factor in the change that humanity has to go through? What is the source of this social change that has to happen? I don't know. I thought that we'll hear something from them. I heard nothing. As much as I read newspapers and their different forms, here and there, just a bit, those that are famous in that regard, they barely write something about it, but practically nothing. Humanity did not think that it could use the break that it has in order to think about what to do. It's a problem. What do you do? They didn't think about it. And what can I do? Where can I yell? And who's going to hear me? Even though I'm trying. It's a problem. Because we're in a state of general correction that has to come to all of humanity, what we call the last generation. And therefore, it won't help that a small group is acting here and can make some kind of change. It's not like it was a few thousands of years ago. Today it has to be a big system that is maybe not deep enough in attainment, but still, in its general desire, is making some kind of change in its desire. In short, I only see that still there's nothing to do. I understand Bala Sulam, and I talked to Rabash about this, about how things were, about how they ran away from Warsaw, from Poland, and they came to Israel, and the way they lived here, and Bala Sulam, and the way he accepted this, that he was a student in a yeshiva, and he was, and as a student he went to study in yeshiva in Mea Shearim in Jerusalem. I saw how hard it was for them. And they did not merit any change. And no matter how much he yelled and talked about the Second World War and the Holocaust and everything, no one heard, and no one heard him here. And after the Second World War and Ben-Gurion and everything, no one listened. And therefore, we're continuing. We're continuing through them, even though that I thought that maybe we'll succeed a bit more. And I see that the rest of the students of Bala Sulam from back then and of Rabash are also sitting the same way, even less than us. Sitting, studying, doing something. As if the time has not come, as Bala Sulam writes, that needs or demands a different kind of correction. You opened with saying that man's nature is egoistic from the very start, so who were you expecting to hear in this wave, next wave? Out of man's ego. That's what I was expecting. I was expecting for people not to come back to this state where we're destroying nature, our environment, where we're inviting such viruses and billions of different germs and what's coming our way from Africa. The locust. These are very dangerous things. It could be nice and everything, but they'll eat all of your crops, all of your everything you grow. What are we going to do? We're not aware of how dependent on nature we are, that we're destroying it. It sounds like kind of a dead end, because where does this change have to start? The governments aren't interested in doing it. It doesn't coincide with their interests. People are only waiting for management to tell them what to do. So where will this change come from? So what's realistic for these people? It's probably from us. It's probably from us. What can I tell you? The governments surely will not do anything. I gave you also an example of how it was in the days of Bala Sulam and also today, and they didn't understand it either. They understand just one thing, that each of them is in a squeeze. He can't do something. He's not like some kind of ruler in China or some dictatorship or somewhere. These leaders, they're very limited. They're in a clamp. And, everyone wants to eat them from all sides. The boundaries set by their opposers, therefore you can't say, okay, friends, let's do this, let's do that, let's not go back to our businesses. What do you mean, let's not? 100,000 people are going to take to the streets against him, and that's it. He's being thrown out happily. Meaning, we have built such a system that takes nothing into consideration but give and take. And it's a problem. We're between the Holocaust Memorial Day and our Independence Day, and it's really painful because it reminds all the torments and suffering that our people went through. That does not awaken us to correction. Why would the corona change something? Our entire life is between the Holocaust Memorial Day and our Independence Day. Our entire life, this is how it is. And therefore, I thought that nonetheless, there will be many people that will say, okay, we have an opportunity. Let's not just go back, but already to a better world. Suppose you left your apartment and for a month or two you weren't there, and now you're going back. So maybe you don't just want to go back. You're going back in order to change something, in order to do something to feel better. So that, for example, in a month or two you won't have to go out again. At least somehow get rid of the reasons that have caused you to sit at home for 2 months. Well, we'll learn this differently somehow. We're getting many questions about what you opened and said about the economy and so on. Who can sit and say what is a useful, beneficial business and what isn't? These are, this is people's life. How come someone can come up and tell a person, your business isn't beneficial to humanity? Close it. First of all, there are sociologists, economists, educators. You have many people that can evaluate these things in a healthy way. I'm not saying that you have to be a Kabbalist for this. It is clear to us that we have to reach some kind of balance with nature, that stop destroying nature. How do we do it? Stop operating businesses by which you only harm the environment. We have to sit, discuss, as a nation, even a worldwide discussion, to make it a worldwide discussion, and to see what's going on. I'm expecting such marches on central streets and capital cities of people saying we're not going back to the corrupted world. We want a corrected world. Someone's writing on Facebook, we learned that there's no need to suffer, we all have to meet our basic needs. Now, this is something that we'll take care of. First of all, we have to take care of our basic needs. I'm talking about what's beyond that. In terms of basic needs, this isn't praised or condemned. This is something that everyone needs. This is something that we have to provide for everything. So, for example, if a woman likes dressing up, being nice and pretty, no problem, she can go to the beauty parlor and so on. These are basic needs. I'm telling you, this is a basic need because it is according to the nature of a woman. She can eat less, but she has to dress up. It's nature. This is how we're built. This is how people are. So what can you do? So we're opening the beauty parlors, this, that. This is what we need. We need medicine. We need hairstylers. Yeah, I agree. How about cheese? You're saying, what do you need 200 types of cheese, kinds of cheese for? And I want a specific kind of cheese. Is it a problem? I like it. I like it too, but here we have to take into account how much do we have to bring to import. I like French cheese. I like this green cheese and so on, but no, you don't have it in the shop. What can you do? That's life. Our entire ego, our ego. What's the limit? Being rational, that's the limit. We have to talk about this. What does it mean to be rational? This, it's philosophy. To the measure to which we harm nature in a way that later on you can't restore things. You can discuss this, even if we don't do anything, but we'll discuss this. We will want for us to change this. Our attitude will already make a big correction. How are we different from, the different green environmentalists? I don't care about that. What I care about is that we care for our environment. And if I go along with the socialists or the environmentalists, then I'll go with them. So what? What's important to me is that we will be closer to the integral nature. Guy? Rav, you mentioned a forum of educated people, historians, economists, for them to sit and discuss what's necessary, what's not, on a regular basis. But not that it's going to be like the UN or something, but that this will really be people that discuss the matter and that they also draw the public into this discussion, and that by that they really scrutinize these things. I'm not talking about Kabbalists or anything, but do you really see that there are such opinion leaders that can create this forum? It's practical? I don't know. I read a few journalists. We have reached a state where really, for humanity, it's hard to listen. No one listens to them. That's the problem, that they're not even let to express themselves. Everything in the newspapers, it's all bought, it's all bribed, you know how it's done. Therefore, everything's covered with money. That's all you have there. In the past, we said that the change will come from below upwards, from simple people. If we look now at the decision makers, they threw tens of billions of Israeli shekels in order to bring economy back to its previous state. In the next wave, that's going to be much more severe. There will be no place to take this money from. And then they'll raise taxes, and there's a limit to that too. Probably this way, nature will squeeze everything out of us. When we'll completely be drained, maybe then we will listen. Do you see a state where an average person will demand the decision makers to make these changes? That there will come some kind of demand from the people to the government? Yeah. I don't think that it's the matter of governments. Governments can't do anything. In a government, everyone sits, everyone holds their chair, so that suddenly, no one will lose their chair, God forbid, and therefore I'm not expecting anything of the government. I'm expecting this of the public opinion, that nonetheless it will come to the understanding of the majority of the people, and then from that it will make an impact. Because still, we're at least we can make a change in elections. I want to ask about public opinion. Many times I heard you say that you think that after the corona we'll get new human beings that won't want the same things. Here and there I hear these opinions, but I am sure that there's lots of money poured into blurring these things and not letting them come out into the open. Obviously, but still, if we look at the next step, what is the next positive step that can happen? Right now, I don't see any positive step besides that we're going to learn on our own flesh how foolish we really are and short-sighted. So we're on the path of pain and there's no way to come out. According to the decisions of the government, what can you do? The public is willing to accept it. They don't see more than reopening their favorite barber shop or coffee shop and so on. What confuses me is that what I understand that the path of suffering it doesn't depend on what decision makers decide. I mean, what do you mean? The government is responsible whether we'll go by the path of suffering or... The government is a projection of the nation. So what the government decides, of course, this is what the nation decides. In the meantime, the nation is in a state where they don't mind what is going on there with nature, with balance, with integral balance. It's completely unimportant to them. Right now, people, what they are protesting about is to get the money to go back to how they were. They don't care about nature. That's, something too global for a person who has some small business that he has to... He doesn't care about nature or anything. What's the first step? and not through blows, of course. Again, it all depends on the conversation. We have to open this kind of conversation about who are we, where are we from, how did we live our life, how did we reach this terrible world that we're in, and what's going on today, and do we want to go back to the same system, to the same relations as we had before. When you're saying these kinds of discussions, we're the ones that have to open them, the ones that are learning about the integral system, or it has to come from sociologists and so on. Maybe it has to come from us, but I'm afraid about not falling into politics and these kinds of things that they'll start toying with us in one or another direction, and they'll start sticking to us, pinning to us different labels. That's why, in the meantime, I prefer to ask us to do broad dissemination without any clear goal, purpose. Rav, if I understand correctly, Rav is not expecting for any kind of change to come from the decision makers, but is expecting for this to come from the public. This is true, correct, but public meaning scientists, universities maybe, public opinion leaders, and so on, but not from the government. In the government, everyone's miserable. They're all dependent on their chair, and you know what kind of calculations they make that force them to act the way that they do. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. If so, then we're expecting for some kind of a change to happen in public opinion that will go from below upwards, that there has to be some kind of a critical mass that will want for some kind of change to happen from below. Yes, this is how it's going to happen, undoubtedly, if we will also start participating in this, possibly. Now I'm waiting for it to start coming back, and we'll see how it starts going back to the mess that we had before. Also, it's unclear to me, why is it good in their eyes to go back to the previous state, and why does the government have to pay for this? This is the question. Why? There is a blow that came from nature. Do you have some kind of insurance? If you have an insurance for all kinds of risks, then please, you'll get it from your insurance company. If not, then why does the government have to work like an insurance company now? Maybe our economists can explain. There's also a force majeure. There's a force majeure paragraph in that insurance companies have that I'm not sure what kind of insurances cover this and which don't, but I'm still a bit surprised by the change that I hear. And when the virus came, you were very optimistic. We called it our dear virus. We said that people will come out different. And in the past few days, the talk became very pessimistic. Suddenly it's the decision makers that didn't change, and this is why everything is turning for the worst. What caused the negative change in the way that you see it? I feel a kind of twist in our attitude. The twist is very simple. Don't you see it from Bala Sulam? Also, I saw this in what Rabash writes. Because at first, they really expected that the corrections will come in an easier, lighter way, that society, humanity, people, especially Israel, the Jews, that they will accept it in a more correct way. And we see that what was. Nothing happens. It's a stubborn nation that doesn't want anything. They feel good about Pharaoh, about being under Pharaoh. They're willing to sell out Moses. He has to run away. That's it.
שאלה אחרונה רק לחדד את הנקודה. כשאנחנו מדברים על שינוי עכשיו מלמטה...
So when we're talking about a change from below upwards, from below, we're talking about the public figures like opinion leaders and... I don't know what you mean by opinion leader. Meaning, sociologists, economists, and so on, wise people. This is what you mean by change? I don't know if I understand you correctly. I'm relating to the nation of Israel that's in between. I'm relating to the government that even though that it determines everything that happens because there's crony capitalism there, but still it acts as it does, and no government in the world can actually do anything. I also see that all of these circles that are shouting, the environmentalists, and that girl, what's her name? Greta. Yeah, Greta. And all of these circles, like Save the Animals and so on, they're quiet. Why aren't they yelling, shouting now? Don't go back to your businesses. Let's limit ourselves. Let's make room for the animals to live besides us. Why not? Nothing. Why? Because they live off being against. Just being against. They get money from it and control, honor, and different positions. You can't do anything with them. The main thing are the people, the common people that haven't changed, that don't understand that we have to go back to our businesses in a subtle way, and maybe only to 50% of our businesses, or 70 or 80%, but not 100%, because we have such businesses that really destroy the infrastructure. If we're talking about a process of change from below upwards, there has to be some kind of change in public opinion, and you're saying that we have to sit and talk about this. So, who has to sit and talk about this? The public, or who? They don't have the platform to do this. Everyone has their own interest. It's not like a family that you sit and talk about this. How does this happen? Because right now, every sector, every person is willing to solve his own problems. He doesn't see himself as tied with others. Therefore, with everything that we talked about up until now, our conclusion is simple. We're coming out of the corona back to a destructive environment, and we're waiting for the next virus. For it to do what? To bring blows over blows over blows until we will want to escape, like in Egypt. Meaning, until a person will get enough blows to think about what is he doing it for. Yeah, as long as the people of Israel hug Pharaoh, not wanting to leave him, even though that they're getting blows, then until we want to let go. Maybe the first stage in this process is building this togetherness, to understand that we're living here together, that we're dependent on one another, and that we can't take care of one sector at the expense of others. Yeah, but everyone understands this. We do not feel bad as a result. I don't see that up ahead there's really something that's wiping my life out. that's so threatening. Meaning only when there will be a threat up ahead, people will be able to listen. Yes. I thought that I see that you're all the time bringing us back to the story of Passover. We didn't come out of Egypt. We are Pharaoh's servants, more than the Egyptians themselves. The Egyptians, they're the commoners. We ourselves were even more than the Egyptians. We're more enslaved than the Egyptians. The Egyptians, they're not enslaved. We're really enslaved. That's how we want to be. We can't come out of this. We want to reopen all of our businesses. The blow's over a bit. Okay, we'll continue. We'll continue with our beloved Pharaoh. Who's Pharaoh? Our Pharaoh now. Our ego. Our egoistic will to receive. And how do we now come out of Egypt in the current wave? We don't want to come out of Egypt. We, you mean the nation of Israel, the entire world? Yeah, humanity that is right now in this state. However, we are going through some kind of initial blow. The first wave as something that came to the entire world. It's something that the entire world experienced, like in Egypt. So we'll wait a bit more, for a few more blows. But it's really something that will especially affect us, the entire world. The next waves will every time be stronger and stronger. And that it'll especially come to us. So according to what you're saying, it sounds like we have to go through these blows. No, it's not that we have to. We already went through this. So how do we escape these blows? We escape the blows by wanting to go into the land of Israel. We have no choice. Either stay in Egypt or run, escape to the land of Israel, to love of friends, brotherly love, and so on and so forth. We're talking about going back to schools, going back to kindergartens, small groups. We talked about a population that maybe did not go through a change yet, but those that did go through an essential change are children and parents. Parents that say that their children don't want to go back to school. They've experienced studying online learning, and also the parents aren't ready for the pressuring world of school. There are parents that won't have choice, but there are also many parents that don't want to send their kids back to school because they're afraid of reoccurring the coronavirus, other things. Maybe we can turn to parents and children. Parents and children, especially mothers and children, they have tasted the taste of the true natural family, of how it used to be. That mom was at home and the children around her. This is what a home is. This is what a family is. And therefore, they're right. Naturally, this is how it's supposed to be. I know my grandma was at home all the time. She barely left home. Barely. We had a house and yard and everything, but she barely left because this is her home. That's it. My grandfather used to go out. My parents, no, both of them were doctors. There was no one at home, only me. A completely different world already. And today, it's so. So I understand them, that after a stop of 1 or 2 generations where now the children and the mother are tasting what a home is, to them it seems as something good, as something new, as something stable, that they feel that this is our nest. Why do we have to leave this and go back to school? We have cursing, fighting, viruses, you name it. How can a child come with different things if not from school? So they're good and nice things on the computer, at school, this, that. There are a few more children that are connected between them. You can go and do sports, something. You can do anything, but why go back to school? This hated school. That all in all, it's only 150 years since it was established by Germans in order for them to have workers, in order to turn farmers into industrial workers. So this is what I have to give where I have to send my child. What do I have as a result? And what does he have after he finishes school? What does he get? He can be taught through the internet, online learning, in an excellent way, and also teach him how to learn this way so he'll learn more and more. It all depends. Work is already falling apart, but really? There's no need for it, but as quickly as possible to disperse for you not to connect with them. So maybe there can come some kind of revolution from the parents and children that they're saying that that's it. We don't want to go back to the old world. We're afraid. Maybe the change will come from here. Maybe. I'll be happy. Doesn't matter from what side will it come, because it hurts a mom what goes on with her children, how much money and time it takes, and everything, of course. But it has to do with her not having to go to work. Today, parents see that they can work from home while the parents are there, so they can do 2 things together. Excellent, all the more. Very nice solution. To continue what Sivan asked, I think that there is some kind of division where there are parents, fathers, and mothers that really enjoy their time at home, that they can work from home, and there's the other type of mothers that go crazy at home, that feel that they have to go out. In a balanced society, maybe there are women that their role is to leave home, and women that their role is to stay home with the children. What do you think? Oh, you have to ask psychologists. I don't know. I think that we can sit at home and work from home. Says so in the Torah too, that blessed is he who finds his livelihood at home. I don't think that with all of today's technologies, we have to leave home, all of us. Maybe, I don't know, 10% of the entire population that works in these kinds of things, but besides that, no. And also, not all day long, but half a day. So actually, the perception in which a person has to find himself is an incorrect perception that a person will be healthier if he'll be at home with the family, with his natural environment. I don't know, that now we're sitting for a month or a month and a half at home. Yeah, about a month or two, depends on how you count it. Suppose 2 months. Suppose that we sat at home for 2 months. I don't know if it's enough, and we're under pressure, and we have no choice, and this and that. But all in all, we went through this in a way that it wasn't that bad. Was there a lot of violence, suicide, things like that? No. What happened in the family? In an average family, there was a surge in domestic violence. Well, of course, if both of them are not at home, then there's zero violence. If both of them are at home 24/7 for 2 months, then of course there's a bit more violence. But the question is, to what extent? And they're not working and they're not doing anything. And also the children, and they're really in some kind of, how to say, and in a kind of an unknown state. What's going to happen? When is it going to happen? When will this be over? But if we're starting to build these kinds of things as something ordinary, then I don't think that there's a problem with it. Most of the people most nations lived this way until not long ago. Besides the big cities, with the crazy world that happened there. Look at everything else, how it was. Last question. How can you encourage people that this is killing them, being in quarantine? I'm not in favor of them being at home. What I'm in favor of is for them to be engaged with different things that have to do with the correction of the world, for them to have clubs, places where they connect. I'm not in favor of them sitting at home, looking at the walls, or all the time watching soccer or seeing his beloved wife. Obviously, this leads to frustration. But people have to be engaged in creating something, and here we have to see how do we bring this, how do we encourage this plan of involvement for them. We give them, like Bala Sulam says, medals, different things, but they know what are they doing it for. And going out to the park, to this, to that. What's the problem? It's better than destroying these kinds of things. It's better that you go out and have a good time there. And what will they make, manufacture? For them to create as little as possible physical stuff, and as much as possible a spiritual connection. And we need as many as possible people to be doing this. How far are we from this? How many viruses away are we? I hope that we're actually close. That's how it seems to me. It's pretty rational what we're talking about. And you already see a kind of an attitude that people don't really want to go back to how things were. They'll later start going back, and we have to follow up on them. Are they happy about going back, or they're cursing their little business, saying it's a pity that I have to go back, I hate this, I came back, I thought the things are going to be good, but I see that I hate this. After each and every blow from Pharaoh, on Pharaoh, we have to come a bit closer to coming out of Egypt. Dr. Laitman, thank you very much for your time. Thanks to all of our friends. My time belongs to you. If you want, I'm willing to talk about this more and more. What we talk about, for it's good for what we're talking about, for it to be known to all of my students. You're responsible for translating this and publicizing this. I'll take care of it. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow. All the best.